There are genuinely times where I open the news, as I do every single morning, and I am baffled. I read the story, I read what our ministers and politicians are saying, and I scratch my head. I think, what? Why did you say this? What exactly do you believe is going to be the outcome of this? When I listen to our ministers and our politicians speak, it's genuinely as if most of them have never even taken Economics 101, the entry level class to economics. In fact, most of them don't seem to have even had economics taught to them at school. Because we have a rather strange story today. A story that, in and of itself, viewed in complete isolation, not actually the worst idea in the world. Once you start to piece together all of the facets that make up the South African political economy, you realize just how damaging and dangerous this will actually be. So the government is considering, at least at this point, because it has been gazetted and it has been floated to Parliament, but it has not officially been instated yet, the 3% revenue contribution that will go towards the Transformational Fund. Now, a very quick, brief overview for those of you that don't know. The ANC for the last 18 years have tried everything in their power to push BEE, AA, affirmative action, EE, employment equity, to the fore. They've tried with everything in them to make a success of these rather terrible programs. The reason these programs are so terrible is that they're not voluntary. They are by force, and usually people don't respond well to force. Every single time a government tries to enforce economic policy, it will almost always have the opposite effect of what the government thinks will happen. For example, in New York City, they decided to implement rent controls. The idea was that if we control the price of rent, prices won't go up and ordinary people will be able to afford homes. What happened is that if you had a building with 20 units in them, they would take 10 of those units and they would place them under permanent rent control. What happened to the other 10 units? They doubled in price within a decade. Why? Because someone who owns a building that just lost 10 of its units will find another way to make that money back, especially since they can't improve or increase the price of at least half their units. Every single time government intervenes in the economy, it is almost always bad. But this is actually not that bad. So how is it going to work? Well, okay, so the government is going to go to all businesses in the country and say, hey, if you supply us with 3% of your after-tax profits, but these are the full profits. It can't be profits after you've spent money on growing your business, spent money on hiring more workers. No. Just after taxes, we take that revenue, 3% you give to us. We're going to pay that into the 100 billion rand Transformational Fund. This is completely voluntary. We will not force you to do this. If you do this, though, you will immediately qualify for level 3 BEE status, making it easier for you and your business to actually do work for the state. Now, Minister Park-Stow believes that they will get at least 15% of all unlisted companies in South Africa to actually sign up to this deal. The DA, however, contests this because the DA says that if they believed that they could get 15% of businesses, and I'll quickly find that for you, because if they believe that they could actually find businesses to want to give away 3% of their after-tax revenues, they wouldn't have to borrow money. And yes, they are actually trying to work with another bank in order to borrow about 35 to 40 billion rand from that bank for the Transformational Fund. 15% of all unlisted companies, small businesses and medium businesses, contributing to the fund, the government themselves say will offer at least 40 billion rand a year. If that is true, the Transformational Fund will be funded within the next 3 years, which should be good. The fact that Park-Stow is trying to go to another bank tells you this is a problem. According to the DA, running a small business in South Africa is already very difficult with high costs, red tape, and unreliable services. The chances that many of these loans will not be repaid are high. Borrowing billions for the Transformation Fund is therefore risky, irresponsible, and could burden the National Treasury with large contingent liabilities. The purpose of borrowing from Afrmex Bank should be to strengthen South Africa's exports. The DA goes on to basically say we should have more infrastructure spending with that money, and we should actually allow for a landscape that improves business relationships within the country rather than trying to start businesses yourself, because that is ultimately what this transformational fund is for. The government will now directly give money to people that want to start businesses. On the surface, as I said, viewed in isolation, this is not a bad idea. This is voluntary. People tend to like doing voluntary stuff. There is a carrot there that tells people that, hey, if you do that, we will give you something in return. Personally, I would have loved to see that something in return be a decline or a way to reduce corporate income taxes as well as business taxes. So rather than paying 33% in corporate tax, you could maybe come down to 28% or 25% if you were to give over or fork over 3% of your money. All of this, however, means nothing when you realize that the ANC will be in charge of this little program. Why is that bad? Well, because we just found out that smelters in South Africa will need electricity subsidies in order to survive. This, by the way, is coupled with everything else that the government is currently doing. And I'll tell you why. I read this article and I genuinely thought we're run by morons. We're run by people with no education when it comes to economics. Here is how our Minister of Trade and Industries thinks about economic growth. Just listen to this. We have had to have large electricity price increases to mitigate load shedding. But we are now in a phase where we want to grow the economy. Let's just stop right there. We still don't have enough electricity, in spite of what the media will tell you, where they go, just last week I read an article saying going from load shedding to now producing more than 10,000 megawatts than what we actually require. But what the media conveniently leaves out is that the only reason we're producing more than what we actually require is because so many businesses are closing down that requires the electricity. And that's why we have more. It's not that we've built more power stations. It's not that we're actually bringing more electricity to market. In fact, our energy availability factor is lower this year than what it was last year, and it's still not anywhere close to the 75% mark that you want to hit as Eskom. So clearly we're not producing more electricity. There's just fewer people using the electricity. But of course, the media will never actually tell you this. But okay, in any environment where you want to promote growth, you introduce taxes, incentives, and pricing measures. So support for Pharaoh allies should fall within a basket of interventions. This is the most insane sentence I've ever read in my life. If you want to promote economic growth, it is the exact opposite of introducing taxes. You want to lower taxes because lower taxes will immediately incentivize more businesses to grow. Of course, what he's talking about here is effectively this. They want to give smelters a special Eskom price. This price still has to be paid, by the way. The way Eskom charges or makes sure that companies can pay less for their electricity is by charging you and me more. So we pay tariffs that then subsidize all of these big businesses. According to Tao, that's just the pain that we have to go through. There's no choice for us in this regard. We will have to accept that no economic growth comes without pain, as stated here. However, Tao is frank that there is a price to be paid for industrialization and that the state must pay it through tax revenues. In other words, that the state will reindustrialize our nation and the state will do so through taxes. So you and I might look at paying even more for electricity in the future, but don't worry, that's not the only way they're looking to pay for it. No. They're going to pay for it with export taxes. You want to know what export taxes are? Let's say, for example, you're a chrome producer, because this whole thing is trying to save the chrome industry of South Africa. You're a chrome mine. You want to mine your chrome, and then you want to send it outside the country because you can get far better prices for it on the outside than what you will ever get for it on the inside. Well, congratulations. Now you want to send it out. The government charges a tax on all of the chrome that you're exporting to another country. This immediately will kill South Africa's ability to compete with other chrome producers in the world. What makes this even more asinine is that South Africa sits on the largest chrome deposits in the world. Roughly 70% of all chrome in the world is in South Africa. This is one hell of a way to slaughter one of the industries that could be thriving in this country. People want chrome. There's a lot of use cases for it. But no, the government wants to tax it. Why does the government want to tax it? So that they can give those smelters cheaper electricity to smelt the chrome that they then cannot export to other countries in order to make money. So in other words, the only way these companies are going to make money is through government handouts and government subsidies, because they sure as hell will not be selling this chrome to anyone. This is the most asinine thinking in the world. It's like Ramaphosa praising the ANC for doing a good job because 26 million South Africans are now on government grants. Why is this asinine? Because government grants mean nothing. It is the government taking out money, giving it to people, and then thinking, hey, VAT is up because more people have money to buy stuff. Yeah, but the VAT is never going to be equal to the amount of money that you've handed out. VAT is 15%. So if you gave someone a check for 1,000 Rand, the most that they will ever be able to pay back into the state as taxes is 150 Rand. So you've lost 850 Rand. Congratulations. That's wonderful economic thinking on your part. This is just more of the same. This entire plan is going to lead to incredibly high electricity prices for you and me, as well as very low economic growth for any of the sectors that will have to pay these new export tariffs that the government is thinking of. This is the same problem with the Transformational Fund. With an ANC at the helm, you almost know that this Transformational Fund will not be used for its intended purposes, especially when you realize that now at Eskom, employees at Eskom get an average of 1 million Rand a year. Eskom's biggest expense is its salaries. The salaries, this article is insane, by the way. Just reading through it the other day, yesterday actually, it's insane. Like, we're talking about price increases from 1994 or salary increases from 1994, 2,900% salary increases from 1994. That is way above what inflation's been, right? And you're talking about nearly 42,000 people currently working at Eskom. And many people say that Eskom is about 60% overstaffed. So Eskom's high electricity prices is a direct result of very bad management from the ANC or Eskom's directors. A country with electricity prices soaring managed to find a way to increase the salaries of board members sitting on the Eskom board from 12 million to 22 million. Yes, last year 12 million, this year 22 million. Why did they get 22 million? As performance bonuses, of course. Because Eskom is doing well. There's no load shedding anymore. Because Eskom managed to destroy the economy alongside the ANC. And since the economy is destroyed, there are no businesses that really need the electricity. So now there's more electricity. That's performance. We have the lights. Congratulations. More money for everyone going around. The point here, ladies and gentlemen, you and I are paying for the absolute ineptitude of this government. And this government thinks that it can charge us more. Like, there's a little bit more in the tank. And if we just hang on a little bit, if we just go along with it a little bit longer, the ANC will somehow magically start to grow the economy. The truth is, there will be no economic growth under the ANC. It will not happen under the current plan. The new tax system shows you just how defunct and deficient their economic thinking is, because they genuinely believe that increasing taxes somehow leads to higher economic growth, when that has never been shown in anywhere in the world. Increased taxes always lead to a slowdown in the economy. Always. No matter where you test it, no matter where it's been tried, when taxes go higher, economic growth decreases because people have less money to do stuff with that money. It's asinine, and it's our country. As always, ladies and gentlemen, hit the like if you liked, the dislike if you didn't. Let me know in the comment section down below what you would do in order to fix South Africa. Massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members for continuing to support this channel. Without you, I would not be able to do what I do. So I genuinely appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.